maze of thoughts ensnare. Every joke a blade prepared, cuts through lies with humor flair. Unseen wisdom few can bear.
All right, folks, welcome back. California v. Monica Sementilli, the love affair murder trial, or as I prefer to call it, the Shideen Hussey murder trial. We have spent 2 full streams on the prosecution's opening statement. When we left off yesterday, she wasn't done. And a few hours later, I went up to visit the big boy's room, checked in on the trial, and she was still going. So, folks, I'm just going to skip because it was just more of the same. I'm going to skip the final 2 hours or something of her opening statement and then go right into the defense opening statement. But here's something. The prosecutor's name is Beth Silverman. And last year, she almost, well, not almost, but if the evidence had been weaker against this triple murderer, her misconduct might have rendered him a new trial because of her misconduct. Listen to this. Let's see here. Before trial, Waltz successfully moved to exclude evidence that he peeped over a fence into a residence where a teenage girl was living. Despite this evidentiary ruling, Silverman asked the defendant about it during his testimony. Judge Lomelli sustained the objection. Yeah. Oh, not done yet. Not done yet. The prosecutor then explained her question was related to whether the defendant used aliases, which Judge Lomelli said he would allow. Silverman proceeded to ask Waltz if he used a fake name to get into a teenage girl's house, and the judge again sustained the defense objection. So, this is from the appellate court. So, there was a pre-trial court order. No, you cannot bring this up. It is not related to the triple murder. You cannot bring this up. She didn't care. She brought it up anyway. Not just once. Even though, hey, quit it. You can't bring this up. She did it again. That's a prosecutor that, despite an excellent case, don't care. If she wants to have something told to the jury, she will, regardless of any court orders. Oh, wait, there's more. Other possible examples of prosecutorial misconduct arising out of the heated cross-examination by Silverman, who admitted to being, quote-unquote, like a dog with a bone. During questioning of the defendant, Silverman asked, "Do you think the jurors are all a bunch of morons? And what's wrong with you?" And if she didn't like the reply, okay, another excuse. Now, and apparently that happened a lot during that trial. Now, it was a trial against Horace Van Walt Jr., who is now a convicted triple murderer. So yeah, I understand. But what if this was not a triple murderer? And apparently, I'm trying to find more cases where she has committed these types of misconduct. If there are, I will find them. If there are, I will find them. But I don't know why a prosecutor with an excellent case, because that case had all the DNA, all the things, the murder weapons, the guy, they had everything. Why go there? Because she wants to, and she doesn't care what the judge says. So that is what I found out about Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman. How does she still have a job if this happens often? Oh, I might have an explanation for that. In 2017, she sued her former supervisor for sexual harassment, and the county settled for $700,000. If you have that against the county, against LA, yeah, she's basically untouchable. So that is what I had found out thus far. So now we know what we're up against. But for me, it doesn't really. That's just some interesting information. But still, 8 hours of state's opening statement, and she went through every piece of evidence, what every witness the next 6 weeks will say, everything. She might as well just rest their case. So, yeah, now this trial gets interesting, because now I know, or more interesting, it is dull as hell. She's jabbed. She can't keep her mouth shut if her life depended on it. And so this will be interesting to see how much of this will go on in this trial. I don't know, but we will find out. And before today, sidebar counter is 2. Only 2. So her and Love are prosecutorial twins. Never know. But we are here for the defense opening statement. I have not listened to this, so this will be new for me as well. So here it is. Sound boost. Playing in 1.25. Let's go.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is really my first opportunity to speak to you all directly, and I really want you to know how much I appreciate that opportunity. My name is Blair Burk, and along with my colleagues Leonard Levine, Jeremy Babich, Regina Peter, and Tom Jones, it is our privilege and our great responsibility to be representing Monica Sementilli. Monica, can you stand up, please? Representing Monica Sementilli in defending against these charges that we believe the evidence will show are untrue. Since the moment this woman was arrested 7.5 years ago, Monica has steadfastly maintained that she is innocent of these charges, and she has consistently pled not guilty in this case. Monica has from the start made clear that there was absolutely no reason, no desire that she would have ever wanted her husband Fabio to be dead. And you will see, ladies and gentlemen, with the evidence that will be presented at trial, not anything Ms. Silverman has said to you, which is certainly not evidence, nor do we believe it will be the evidence, and not anything.
Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Blair Burk, who you see here, is representing Harvey Weinstein. Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, Blair Burk is Let's see, when is this article? Okay, no, she represented back in 2017 Harvey Weinstein. Was she involved in the Amber Heard depot? Oh, let's see here. Yeah, she also took Amber Heard's deposition. So she was a part of the Johnny Depp team. Okay. All of a sudden, this trial got interesting. So you have, I don't know, Bush, if that is the deposition where Amber Heard is, yeah, just all of that. So what do we have here? An attorney who represents celebrities and notorious celebrities, and now Mrs. Sementilli. And on the other side, you have a prosecutor who commits prosecutorial misconduct once in a while. This is getting interesting.
I say right now, as the judge will instruct you, it is only the evidence you will receive at trial which you have to base any decision you make on. Over the last Friday and now Tuesday, you have heard hours of argument from Ms. Silverman about the evidence she expects to be shown in this trial. But over those hours and hours of slides and photos and notes and texts and statements about what she expects the evidence to be, you have not heard one piece of evidence, one text, one letter, one recorded call, one statement by Monica Sementilli, or any indication that Monica Sementilli ever uttered a word about wanting her husband dead. We believe that the reason that Monica is not guilty of these charges is that the evidence will show that everything Ms. Silverman talked about, everything she presented before you in the last 2 days, has only to do with two things. One, that she was having an affair with Robert Baker, and two, that it turned out that Robert Baker decided that he was going to kill her husband. No reason that Monica would have wanted, no motive, and no interest, and that it was Robert Baker who made that choice for her and then convinced her, pleaded with her, deceived her into believing he was an innocent man, and that the reason that she was caught up in this whole thing was because he had been targeted and was not guilty. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to show you that this is who Monica and Fabio Sementilli were together on October 31st, 2016. This is 4 months before Fabio was killed. And you will see for yourself the relationship between Monica and Fabio. This is a video taken in an intimate moment, not in public, not in some show of their relationship. This is their relationship.
And she also was a cheating hussy because at the same time she was sending illicit photos to her lover. This will be an interesting. I would assume they would be calling out the prosecution a bit harder, but this is the approach Blair Burk is choosing, and with the clients she's had, I guess she knows better than me.
And this is who Monica and Fabio were together on January 10th, 2017, only 2 weeks before Fabio was killed. And this is who Monica, Fabio, and their 2 daughters, Jessica and Bella, were on January 15, 2017, just 8 days before Fabio was brutally murdered by Robert Baker and Christopher Austin. They were happy together. They were loving each other. They were close, each other's best friends, husband and wife for nearly 20 years.
This might be a personal preference for me. Maybe I don't understand. I know there are people out there that claims they can love more than one person. I'm not one of those. And if you do, you kind of need to tell everybody involved that is what's going on, in my opinion. And I'm not so sure, oh, she loved him so dearly, so dearly, so dearly. Yeah, she still screwed another guy. That photo, don't know when it was taken. But if it was while the banging of another dude was ongoing, yeah, then it's just a facade.
And absolutely no reason in the world that Monica would have wanted Fabio harmed. No reason in the world that Monica would have wanted Fabio killed. And the prosecution in this case is going to ask you to believe that Monica Sementilli suddenly went from this person to being some kind of criminal mastermind who plotted and orchestrated the brutal killing of Fabio in his own home. On behalf of Ms. Sementilli, we implore you to do one thing, which is wait until you form any opinion in this case, until you've been able to look and see the evidence in the case. Not Ms. Silverman's claim about what the evidence is, not even my claim about what the evidence is, but the evidence that will be presented in this case, the witnesses who will talk to you in this case. You decide whether it's truthful testimony. You decide whether those witnesses are believable. And that is how we have justice in the United States of America in a criminal trial. Not just because a prosecutor tells you it's so, but because the evidence either proves or doesn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Monica has committed a crime, that Monica somehow wanted her husband dead for some reason. And over the last 2 days, I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, there has been no evidence presented to you at any time that Monica Sementilli was plotting, conspiring, or indicating to anyone before Fabio was killed or after that she wanted him dead. You will hear the evidence presented that Monica Sementilli loved her husband. You will hear from the people that knew them best, who spent time with them in the weeks and days before Fabio was killed, that they were a truly happy, loving couple. But what you've heard over the last 2 days is not evidence that somehow Monica Sementilli was plotting to kill her husband. There's no statement, there's no text, there's no recorded phone call, even as Ms. Silverman says, when Monica would have thought no one was listening. But what you have heard is hours and hours of graphic statements about the fact that Monica had an affair. What you've heard is that there will be evidence of character assassination, that somehow, because Monica was having an affair with Robert Baker without her husband's knowledge, that because Monica Sementilli was not wanting others to know about that affair and covering it up and using text messaging that she deleted about that affair, that somehow that is supposed to prove to you that Monica Sementilli is guilty of murder, that Monica Sementilli is guilty somehow of conspiring to kill her husband because she had an affair. We have not, from the start of this case 7.5 years ago, ever once contested that Monica Sementilli probably made the most fatal mistake of her life when she entered into an affair with Robert Baker.
Gwendolyn says, it's possible that Monica wanted her husband and her lover. Some people want it all. Yeah, bored housewife. She doesn't want to leave that. She loves her husband, but he is never around. So she needs to get her feelings elsewhere. That might be it. I can't put myself in that kind of situation. I am a one-woman man. That I can't fathom the alternative. I mean, I'm having a hard time as it is keeping Miss Viking happy. Imagine trying to make 2 women happy. Yeah. But as Blair Burk here makes sense. And this is something interesting that the prosecution failed to mention. Not in 7.5 years has Monica Sementilli argued against. Yeah, she had an affair with Robert Baker. And I said this yesterday a few times. The only thing that is new is that the co-killer being thrown in jail with an undercover cop who bugged him day and night for days or weeks on end until he got some information. And then they took that Mr. Austin and told him, yeah, either you testify or we will prosecute you and you will spend the rest of your life in prison.
But that has nothing to do with Monica wanting Fabio dead or conspiring to kill him. There's going to be evidence that after Fabio was murdered, in her grief, the person who stepped up to replace Fabio, to control Monica, to surveil her, to get her to be the center of his world by making himself the center of her world, is Robert Baker. And you will hear evidence over and over and over again about the fact that Monica was duped into believing that Robert Baker had nothing to do with Fabio's death. But in the beginning, you will hear the most important evidence, which is what Fabio and Monica were together prior to his being killed. What you will hear from the people who knew them best, many of them prosecution witnesses, who will tell you that they spent extensive time with this couple in their home, in unguarded moments. And you will hear also from Fabio and Monica's own daughters. Jessica, who was 18 at the time her dad was killed, Bella, who was 16. And ladies and gentlemen, you will hear from those 2 girls who will look you in the eye and tell you what they observed, what they saw of their mom and dad together, what they observed, what they saw of their mom's caring and love for their father, what they observed, what they saw of their parents' interaction with each other, not just out at a restaurant, not just at a party, but at home, at night, in their most unguarded moments. And what you will hear, ladies and gentlemen, is that there is not a whiff of evidence. There is not a suggestion by any witness you'll hear from that Monica and Fabio ever had any conflict with one another. They had no beefs. They had no resentments. You will hear time and again from the witnesses in this case of Monica Sementilli's caring for her husband, closeness to her husband, and it will be clear from that evidence that Monica Sementilli had absolutely no reason to want her husband to be harmed. You'll also hear, because of Fabio's employment, they did have financially a very secure life. There were no worries about money. They weren't rich, but they had bought their own home. Yes, it was mortgaged heavily, but Fabio had a good job. And as long as he was working and had a salary, that salary allowed them to lead a lifestyle that was comfortable and great. And you heard from the Silverman about the perks and the salary of that job, but you will also hear that those perks and salary would only be forever if Fabio Sementilli was alive. And what you will also hear, ladies and gentlemen, is that those perks, that travel that Ms. Silverman talked about, that Monica and Fabio so enjoyed, that lifestyle was not one that anybody believed was fake or a show or a put on. Every single witness in this case who will come in here and testify to you about the genuineness of Monica's love for Fabio, caring for Fabio, and time with Fabio, and Fabio's care and love of her will consistently tell you that that love was real. That friendship, being each other's close friends and co-parents, and the pride they had in their involvement in their daughter's life. In the weeks and even days before Fabio was brutally killed, there is no one who's going to not say to you that that love and affection and friendship was real. And there's not going to be a single piece of evidence that you see throughout this trial that tells you otherwise. Now, in the weeks and months before Fabio was killed, you will see for yourselves testimony and hear for yourselves testimony from witnesses who describe a household where there wasn't a woman in the household who was out and caring about money and partying it up without her family. What you'll hear instead is Monica was present. She was involved. She spent money. And you know what the witnesses will tell you? She spent money on food because she loved to cook for Fabio and the family. They had people over in the weeks before he was killed all the time, not just on rare occasions, but all the time, friends and family in their home who saw them, who saw how they interacted. Fabio's son, Monica's stepson, Luigi Sementilli, will come into this courtroom and talk to you. He'd been 3 weeks living with Fabio and Monica just before Fabio was killed. He will tell you about their relationship and what he saw and the genuineness of what he saw. Not a single witness in this case is going to tell you that prior to Fabio's death, prior to the police telling them the police opinions about Monica having an affair and what that had to mean, none of those witnesses will say anything other than the affection and love and caring by Monica Sementilli for Fabio Sementilli was real. In 2016, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take you back. I want to take you back so that you can see a roadmap to the evidence that will be presented by both the prosecution and the defense about what Monica Sementilli was doing in 2016. She was 44 years old in 2016. She was no longer working as she once had at an elementary school locally where she helped teach and care for autistic children in an elementary school. She had been a stay-at-home mom with 2 teenage daughters. And as they started to get more active in their own lives, Monica decided to join a gym. And she joined the LA Fitness Club, where she started to work out and train with a trainer. And she decided to join the club's racquetball team. And the coach of that racquetball team, the head coach of that league, was Robert Baker. You'll hear that Fabio was traveling more and more for his job. You'll hear that the girls were no longer all the time at home. And you'll hear that as Monica got more active in the gym and started learning about racquetball that was taught to her by Robert Baker and started competing competitively, that Monica was happy, she was getting more fit, and she was making new friends at the LA Fitness Club. You'll hear that she started being friendly with some of the girls from the club. They would go out for karaoke. You will hear that she's developed a new circle of friends in her life from her activities at LA Fitness. And you will also hear, ladies and gentlemen, that when she joined the racquetball team and started training at LA Fitness, that Robert Baker started to have more and more a role in Monica Sementilli's life. This is not a case where Monica Sementilli went looking for Robert Baker. What you will learn is that this is going to be a case where Robert Baker went looking for Monica.
I'm sorry, Council. We're going to take our lunch recess this time. I hope this is a good time for you.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be in recess until 1:30. The admin advised not to discuss this case among yourselves with anyone else. If former expressing opinion to the cause, time submitted to you. Have a good lunch. I'll see you at 1:30.
Okay. Okay. Interesting start. Let's skip ahead to this is the best thing
Present jury and all those present
about
afternoon.
recapping. I can skip ahead and I can play a little faster.
Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's see it. Haven't heard yet what they are alleging. What are they alleging? They are alleging that Monica Sementilli had her lover assassinate her husband, so she could get 1.7 million in life insurance. Now, the murder was almost 8 years ago, and Mr. Baker was convicted a number of years ago. He has, to this day, said Monica wasn't involved. And so they haven't had a proper case for 7.5 years until they got Mr. Baker's co-killer. That was November of this year. So they found him, they threw him in jail, they put an undercover cop in jail, who bugged him day and night for days and weeks until they got enough information to present to this Mr. Austin that if you don't testify against Monica, we will prosecute you and you will spend the rest of your life in prison. Mr. Austin has no criminal history. At that time, he was apprehended. He had a newborn child and a new wife. So yeah, you tell me if he had incentive to go testify against Monica. Because if it didn't, they would prosecute him.
I'll give you a sec.
Thank you.
So before the lunch break, we left off discussing that in early 2016. Now, this is a year before Fabio was killed. Monica was no longer working at the elementary school. She had been, for the last couple of years, I think 3 years, at home while the girls were in high school. And I think Bella was in junior high that first year she was out of the elementary school. And Monica decided to go to LA Fitness to start working out, to get fit. She was 44 years old. They were happy, and Fabio was right on the cusp of starting to travel both internationally and domestically for his job. Fabio, as a director of education and an executive at his hair company, Wella, was doing better and better, and more of that time was spent traveling out of town. And the girls, the teenage girls, Jess and Bella, Jess was already 18, Bella was 16. They had more and more of their own lives, and Monica started working out, going to the gym, and she met a great group of friends who also worked out. And she met, who you'll hear from, a trainer, Matt Nurse, who she started training with. And through Matt, met the coach of the racquetball team, Robert Baker. Now, you're going to hear quite a bit about Robert Baker. You should know who Robert Baker was when he met Monica Sementilli. Robert Baker was the coach of the racquetball team. They had a competitive league. He was also head of the league and scheduling all their games and competitions. Baker was a former military policeman, an MP when he was with the Army. He didn't serve time in the Army. He was a military policeman. And after he left the Army, he had a number of different jobs. And by all accounts, and by witnesses you will hear in this courtroom, Robert Baker was a charming, manipulative, hustling guy. And Robert Baker, when he started coaching Monica, got closer and closer and closer as the year went on. Although Fabio would occasionally, I think 2 or 3 times during 2016, come with Monica to the gym. She would try to get him to play racquetball. The gym wasn't Fabio's thing. And although he went 2 or 3 times, he never got into racquetball, never spent much time there, but met Baker. And through the course of that year, through the course of spring and summer of 2016, Monica started spending a good deal of time working out at the club. Now, in the spring of 2016, you were going to hear that at some point, Monica and Robert Baker began an affair. And that affair, starting in 2016, went through that next year. Now, Monica had a very active life at home. That didn't change. Monica was the sort of head hostess of the home. They constantly, you will hear from people who loved and knew them, had people, friends over, relatives over, work colleagues of Fabio's over. They were constantly having people into their home, in and around them, who got to see up close what Fabio and Monica were like, their relationship, how they interacted. And again, consistently, you will hear Monica's love for Fabio was clear. It was genuine. Fabio adored Monica, as I think the prosecutor said. They were laughing, dancing, living as a couple. And yes, Monica Sementilli had an affair. Now, the prosecutor is going to ask you also to believe that 2 things cannot possibly be true. That it cannot be possible that Monica Sementilli loved her husband, loved her family life, and also that she had a sexual affair. And what you will learn from the evidence in this case is having a sexual affair doesn't mean you want your husband to die. Through the course of 2016, the evidence will show you, ladies and gentlemen, that Monica was able to balance her family life, her home life, with her affair. You don't be, let me say this. I think the evidence is going to show you that during that summer and fall of 2016, prior to Fabio's brutal killing, what people observed is that Monica Sementilli was happy. She wasn't gone. She wasn't remote. There was no conflict in the house. She never made a single statement to anyone that she was critical of Fabio or that Fabio was critical to her. You are not going to hear any witnesses say they even saw a fight between Monica and her husband. It was a happy home, and Monica Sementilli was clearly balancing both. She was definitely home. She was definitely involved with Fabio still in the girls' lives, but she was also exploring a sexual affair with Robert Baker. We know from witnesses who will be in this courtroom, even Fabio's son, Luigi, his adult son, in the fall of 2016, Luigi comes to town with his girlfriend, and they actually live for 3 weeks in the Sementilli home. Every day around Fabio and Monica, see them, see how they're acting, and Luigi himself says he only saw love and friendship and nothing that was anything but Fabio and Monica were together and happy. And you'll see from that evidence that while the prosecution will tell you over and over and over again about the sexual nature of Monica's relationship, that even that the sexual nature of her relationship with Robert Baker was unusual and kinky, and that they even at some point started having sexual relationships with other people. That has nothing to do with a motive to kill. Nothing. And I ask you to consider, as you listen to what I understand from the prosecution as even a detective reading to you, describing sexual videos between Monica and Robert Baker, that again, her sexuality, her choice, which some of us may disapprove of, to have an affair has nothing to do with wanting her husband dead. You will hear witnesses in this case tell you, Monica's best friend, Deborah Obad at the time, that in May or June of 2016, she started to suspect something was up, that Monica might be having a dalliance of some kind. She was dressing up more. She was putting lipstick on. She was out when they would come over with Fabio. She was just a little more excited and put together than usual. But Deborah Obad will also tell you, who, by the way, Deb's going to tell you she was a very close friend of Fabio's also, that there was nothing she saw in terms of Monica's dissatisfaction or upset or anger or anything from Monica Sementilli that indicated anything that was wrong or that she was unhappy about. You are also going to hear that at some time during the fall of 2016, you will learn that Monica Sementilli made clear to Robert Baker one thing. When Robert Baker told Monica Sementilli that he wanted her, that he was not wanting anything but for them to be together, that she should consider leaving her husband and being with him. And Monica started talking about her family life and her love for her children. In fact, you'll hear from witness Matt Nurse, her trainer. At one point, Monica Sementilli spoke to Matt Trainer about being unfaithful, about a sexual affair or the potential of a sexual affair. And you'll hear that Matt Nurse said to Monica, why wouldn't you just get a divorce if you're going to have an affair? And Monica told Matt Nurse, why would I ever want to throw away 20 years of marriage? Monica Sementilli was not interested in leaving her husband. She was not interested in leaving her family. She loved her family and she loved being a part of her family. And what is absolutely going to be clear from the evidence is that when Monica Sementilli told Robert Baker that she wasn't interested in leaving her husband, that was a fatal mistake that Monica will have regretted for the rest of her life. Because the evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that there was someone decidedly not happy with things as they were, decidedly not accepting that Monica could go on balancing both having her family life and being with Fabio and also being with Robert Baker. And you will learn that Robert Baker decided to take things into his own hands. Robert Baker, you will learn from the evidence, decided that it wasn't good enough for him that Monica wanted to stay with her family and stay with her husband, and that Robert Baker wanted to control Monica Sementilli's future. And so when Monica made clear she had no interest in leaving her husband, she was perfectly happy to continue the affair, but just that, wanted to continue the affair and did not want to leave her family. Robert Baker decided he was not going to give her the choice. And Robert Baker was going to make the decision for her, and alone started formulating a plan to kill Fabio Sementilli. Now, how do we know this? We know this because Robert Baker is going to come into this courtroom and sit in that chair and tell you himself that he was the one at this point who decided to play God. He and he alone, deceiving Monica, not sharing with you his intentions, continuing with the affair, but increasingly, you will see manipulative and controlling in her life. Robert Baker, as the evidence will show, began to stalk and follow and prey upon the entire Sementilli family. You will learn from the evidence in this case that even Fabio and Monica's daughters started noticing that Robert Baker was around. You'll hear from Jessica, the 18-year-old at the time, that she was driving one day and all of a sudden Baker showed up. You'll hear other witnesses talk about, you even have Deborah Obad, who at one point takes a picture of Robert Baker's car. Robert Baker's car parked down the street from the Sementilli home at a time Robert Baker wasn't at the Sementilli home. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that at this point in Monica's life, unknowing that the man she was sleeping with was not going to accept her decision, Robert Baker started to formulate a plan to kill Monica's husband. Now, you will already know, I think you've already heard, Robert Baker has already admitted his guilt. Robert Baker has already gone to the judge and said, I plead guilty. I did this. And you will also learn that Robert Baker has never once asked for a deal, a benefit, any leniency where he could turn around and say, if actually Monica was involved in this, hey, I want some benefit so that I can testify that Monica's involved. But that's not the truth. And you will see why and how the prosecution here has turned the idea of Monica Sementilli having an affair into some kind of motive to murder. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the prosecutor told you that somehow in the fall of 2016, Monica had some kind of big problem. I think she said that the two worlds of being with Fabio and carrying on an affair, that these two worlds somehow just couldn't coexist. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit that real life's just not like that. People do have affairs on occasion. We could disapprove of somebody being unfaithful to their husband, but in Monica Sementilli's life that she loved, that the evidence will clearly show, the prosecution told you, it was a great life. The idea that Monica Sementilli couldn't have her family and be coexisting with a relationship outside of her marriage is just factually untrue. And you will see that from the evidence in the case. You will see, ladies and gentlemen, that there was absolutely no problem or impediment for Monica Sementilli carrying on that affair and also staying with her family. Now, the prosecutor has clearly suggested to you, she didn't suggest it, she told you, that the evidence will be that one of the reasons apparently Monica Sementilli plotted and schemed and was a master manipulator to kill her husband was because she didn't want to get a divorce. Think about that. The prosecution is suggesting to you that Monica Sementilli decided to kill her husband because a divorce was not an option. But the evidence will clearly show you in this trial that of course divorce was an option. Monica and Fabio were from Canada. They first met there. Fabio had a platform hair business. Monica had been teaching, and then she was a makeup artist and in fact became a very well-renowned makeup artist in Canada. And Fabio and Monica met and married in Canada. But what you didn't hear really is that although the prosecution would have you to believe that Monica Sementilli would somehow be cut off from her life, cut out, I think Ms. Silverman said, if she were to ever get a divorce, the facts you will hear is that Fabio came from divorce, that Monica came from a family where there was a divorce, And that when Monica Sementilli
Yeah, that is a really good point, because the prosecution made a big deal about both of them coming from Catholic families where divorce wasn't an option. And now we learn that they were both divorcees already. So yeah, that takes care of that argument.
married Fabio, he had gotten a divorce. He had gotten a divorce. There was no issue whatsoever with Monica Sementilli if she did not want to be with her husband, if she did not want to stay with her husband, if she wanted to leave her husband, why not just get a divorce? When she married Fabio, if her family would have cut her out, if there had been a divorce, you will hear the opposite, that Monica's family embraced and loved Fabio and immediately accepted him in to their family. And there was never an issue with divorce. You will hear that, in fact, Monica and Fabio weren't even particularly religious. Yes, they were Catholic, but they didn't even get married in the Catholic Church. They got married in the Anglican Church. You'll hear that Monica and Fabio were not particularly churchgoers. You will hear actual evidence in this case that the idea that Monica Sementilli would have killed her husband, as the prosecutor said, because a divorce would have meant Monica was cut out of something, is simply untrue. And what else did the prosecutor tell you about why Monica would do such a
Still
thing
opening statements.
in this case? Why she would conspire and decide and intend
But now it's the
to have her
defense.
husband brutally killed? Well, the prosecutor says to you, there was plenty of money. They had a wonderful lifestyle. And she had a motive to kill her husband because of life insurance. Well, let's talk about what the facts will be about that. You are going to learn in this case, ladies and gentlemen, that at the time of his death, Fabio had only purchased one life insurance policy in his life. One. Other than whatever his work provided, which they provided a policy, which we'll talk about, Fabio Sementilli had only ever purchased one life insurance policy. Well, Monica Sementilli must have wanted that, must have been a beneficiary to that. But what you will learn, the facts, the documents that you will see, is that in fact, the one life insurance policy Fabio Sementilli ever bought, Monica was not only not a sole beneficiary to the policy, she wasn't even on the policy. Fabio bought a life insurance policy for his son from the previous marriage in which he'd gotten a divorce. One policy that he bought himself. You will hear no evidence in this case that Monica Sementilli ever tried to get a life insurance policy for her husband. You'll hear no evidence in this case that she ever asked her husband or encouraged her husband to get a policy for her. Nothing. What you will hear is that Fabio Sementilli's work had a benefits plan for him in the company. That's Wella. You will also hear that very shortly before his death, Wella was sold to a new company. That company was Cody. And you will hear yourself from the evidence in this case that Monica Sementilli was not even a sole beneficiary on the policy he had with his company. Never. Monica Sementilli was a shared beneficiary with her daughters, Jessica and Bella, her adult daughter, Jessica, her teenage daughter, her 16-year-old Bella, and also Luigi Sementilli. And you will also learn that the majority of any benefits coming from that life insurance policy were coming to the kids, not Monica Sementilli, the kids. She was.
Okay. This, folks, she's actually ruining most of the state's case here, because if the majority is to the kids and the other life insurance was only to his son, I mean, say she can receive a grand total of, $500,000 out of that. Yeah. Now, that's nothing to sneeze on, but they had a highly mortgaged $1.7 million or $1.3 million home, which was mortgaged. We know this because of the prosecution's opening statement. It was so highly mortgaged that when she sold that house, she got $130,000 in profits after taxes. That's it. So, yeah. So benefiting, she had a lifestyle where they travel around the world, good home, good benefits, shopping, everything. Why kill a guy who was worth probably in the long run millions for a grand total of $500,000? That doesn't make sense. Blair Burk, you're good.
Wasn't a sole beneficiary, and she had no majority interest in any life insurance policy that was provided for the company. You will also hear the actual evidence, which will show you that the most valuable thing that Monica Sementilli could have wanted, if she cared about money, was for Fabio to continue with his salary. Think about it. The prosecution has described to you this great life Monica was having because of Fabio's salary and the lifestyle that afforded. The prosecution has told you the facts will be that Fabio and Monica went on these wonderful trips to Cabo, to Mexico. Why? Because he was awarded, as long as he was working, these trips for free. So what happens if Fabio Sementilli is dead? What possible benefit would Monica Sementilli have for cutting herself off from that, what Ms. Silverman described as a lavish lifestyle? There was none. There was no financial motive. You are actually going to hear specific evidence about what anyone would have believed the value of the benefits Fabio would have received from his company if he were to die in 2016 and early 2017. And from that evidence, you will know without any question that Monica Sementilli would have been far better off financially with Fabio alive and thriving and not gone. It will be crystal clear to you that any claim of a financial motive in this case is simply untrue. And the evidence will prove that. Now, Monica and Robert Baker, as they were having an affair, like many people having an affair, constantly texted and communicated. And those texts and communications, Monica worked very hard to keep private. And like many people who have ever had an extramarital affair, many people try to keep their communications with their lover private. There's not anything inherently criminal about that. And yes, you will hear, of course, Monica deleted her communications with the man she was having an affair with. You will hear that they used messaging apps separate from her normal messaging apps. But you will not hear any evidence that only criminals somehow use these messaging apps. I guarantee you there are people in this courtroom, including me, who use WhatsApp and Viber and all kinds of messaging apps all the time. And there's nothing criminal about those apps. Absolutely nothing. And frankly, end-to-end encryption, as you can hear from the experts, is no different from your Apple messaging. That's end-to-end encryption. So the suggestion that something is proof of an intent to kill or an intent to do harm or a conspiracy, because Monica Sementilli and Robert Baker were communicating by WhatsApp or Viber, is simply inconsistent with the evidence you'll hear. And yes, Robert Baker and Monica Sementilli constantly texted. They constantly texted through 2016 and early 2017. And after her husband was killed, they continued to text. Because after Fabio was killed, yes, Monica, having no idea that Robert Baker had done the awful thing that he did, continued her affair, took comfort and solace, and allowed Robert Baker into her life more and more. And yes, she was attracted to him. She was comforted by him. She continued the affair. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is not a crime, and you will know it's not a crime as the evidence is presented. You will also learn of those thousands and thousands of communications, of those hundreds of texts, phone calls, emails, some of which you will hear about in this courtroom. There's not a single piece of evidence among all of those communications that gives you the slightest indication that Monica wanted her husband dead or that Monica conspired with anyone to do anything. Not a single one. And you will also hear the prosecution tell you that somehow, some way, the fact that there were so many communications around the days around Fabio's killing, that is somehow evidence that Monica Sementilli was involved. But you will also hear that the number of communications between Baker and Monica in the days around the day of or the day before Fabio was killed are absolutely no different than they were in the days before or the weeks before. No different. So the idea to suggest that somehow the volume of calls was different between New Year's and January 23rd simply proves nothing. It proves nothing at all. What you will see instead, ladies and gentlemen, what you will see instead is that over the course of the summer and fall of 2016, leading up to this murder, the pattern of communications between Robert Baker and Monica Sementilli show you the dynamics and control that Robert Baker asserted over Monica and not the opposite. You will learn from the actual evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that 2/3 of the communications that Robert and Monica had were Robert attempting to reach out to Monica to find out what she was doing, where she was, when she could meet, when she could see him. All of those communications reflect that over 2/3, frankly, of all of their communications came from Robert Baker and not Monica Sementilli. Now, one of the great things about our system is that in order to convict somebody for a crime, you actually have to have evidence. You actually have to have evidence that tells you that that person committed that crime beyond a reasonable doubt. And yet what you've heard so far from the prosecution is not direct evidence of any commission of a crime. What the prosecution is going to ask you to consider is what they've mentioned is circumstantial evidence. And there's no better example of the dangers of circumstantial evidence here than this fact. The prosecution has told you already that they can show that there were hundreds of messages and texts in the days around the killing between Monica and Baker. But the evidence also will show you that there were the same number of messages in the days and weeks before. And as the court will instruct you, with circumstantial evidence, if you can draw 2 or more reasonable conclusions from the circumstantial evidence that is presented to you, and one of those reasonable conclusions points to innocence and the other to guilt, you must accept the one that points to innocence and not the one that points to guilt, where there is a reasonable conclusion to be made. And of course, reject anyone that would be unreasonable. But as you see here, the fact that the prosecution may show you that there were hundreds of communications between Robert Baker and Monica Sementilli on the days around when Robert Baker killed Fabio means nothing if they are the same number of communications in the days and weeks before.
I really like how she says reasonable conclusion instead of reasonable doubt. Because reasonable doubt that expression has been watered down to more or less reasonable doubt is, I'll give this as an example. After the prosecution's opening statement, I have a lot of questions. During the state's case in chief, they have to answer all of my questions until I only have unreasonable questions left. If I end up still with questions at the end of the trial, there's reasonable doubt. But I've seen in so many trials where there is so much reasonable doubt and the jury still convicts. And I do believe is one of the things is that reasonable doubt is watered down. It has nobody really believes in it anymore. So that's why I think that Burk here, Blair Burk, is using better terminology.
One of the things the evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, as you sit and listen to the testimony of witnesses and see the documents that are presented, is that over the course of the fall of 2016, Robert Baker's manipulation and interest in controlling Monica Sementilli became greater and greater and greater. You will hear even from other witnesses in this case, a woman named Paula McCullum, who also trained at the gym, who also knew Robert Baker. Robert Baker charmed and manipulated her as well. In fact, Robert Baker and Paula McCullum had an affair around the same time he was with Monica Sementilli in the early stages of their relationship. And after he dumped Paula McCullum was still willing to do and give Robert Baker anything he wanted. And you will learn, ladies and gentlemen, that when Robert Baker was planning the murder of Fabio Sementilli, he didn't use or be assisted by Monica Sementilli. He used Paula McCullum, who will get on the stand and testify and admit to you that she had originally had an affair with Robert Baker, that while they were no longer sleeping together and no longer together, that Robert Baker called her and asked her to rent a car for him. You will learn from Paula, she had no idea there was a murder that was going to happen or what Robert's intentions were. And you will learn that Paula McCullum, just because Robert Baker asked her to, rented the car that Robert Baker used to kill Fabio Sementilli. Not Monica, Paula McCullum. Because Robert Baker was an aggressive, manipulative, controlling man. And you will see from corroborative evidence, even in the sexual relationship, that the prosecution says it will spend so much time proving up, even though there's been no contest, no dispute that there was a sexual relationship. Even the nature of that sexual relationship will tell you about the control Robert Baker exercised. Robert Baker took graphic sexual photos of Monica Sementilli, and you will learn in a very creepy way, stored them in a series of memory cards that were found among his belongings. Graphic sexual images of things that he had Monica Sementilli do. You'll hear that other witnesses will talk about Robert Baker and his control sexually of women, and that Robert Baker even asked, according to Paula McCullum to go out and have sex with other men. And it was Robert Baker's deviance and sexual control that you will see reflected in the actual evidence in this case. And you'll also see that Robert Baker started following and stalking Monica Sementilli. It's interesting. You're going to see, this is a computer data slide that you will see later, actually presented by a prosecution expert who's going to talk to you about geolocation and tracking Robert Baker's movements during this period of time. And what that evidence is going to clearly show you from this slide is that in and around the time that Monica was continuing to want to live with her family and be with her family while also carrying on an affair, that wasn't good enough for Robert Baker. And you will see the constant number of times that Robert Baker was lurking in and around the Sementilli home. You will also see, as the prosecution has suggested, they had an entire team of specialized officers, I think from the official high-powered narcotics gang unit, I think the prosecutor mentioned, where this team of highly trained surveillance officers were set their sights on Monica Sementilli and Robert Baker. And for hours and hours and hours, they surveilled and followed Monica Sementilli and Robert Baker. And what did you see that they found from the prosecutor's description? You saw that Robert Baker was having sexual relationships with Monica, kissing in public. You saw that Monica Sementilli was kissing someone else. You'll learn at Robert Baker's direction. You will hear consistently that the sum total of this high-powered surveillance unit in following Robert Baker and Monica Sementilli found out exactly one thing. They were having an affair they already knew that she was having. And what else will you learn? The prosecutor talked about a surveillance officer who's going to get on the stand and talk about Monica Sementilli at a bar where she was kissing a bouncer. But what you will also hear is that Robert Baker not only shopped for Monica Sementilli, she told her what clothes she would have to wear. Those same surveillance officers spent hours recording Robert Baker bringing clothes, short dresses, short skirts to Monica Sementilli, and in a gas station parking lot, having her try on those clothes for him and then putting her in the back of a car. You will also hear that things were not happy between Robert Baker and Monica Sementilli after the death of her husband. You will know one of the reasons that it was so clear that Robert Baker felt he had to take things into his own hands is that after Fabio died, Monica was truly devastated, grieving. You will hear witness after witness who tells you that her grief was real, that her tears were real, that her physical manifestations of the loss of her husband could not have been faked. You will hear she was shaking. You will hear that there were real tears constantly. And you will even hear that 2 months after Fabio's death, Robert Baker had had enough at one point. And you will hear a story that the surveillance agents tell about following Robert Baker and Monica to a parking lot where Robert Baker is driving. And that's another thing, please. The theory is Monica is driving this relationship somehow, but constantly, time and again, you will see from the surveillance tape, it's Robert Baker who's taking over Monica's car or truck. It's Robert Baker who is driving Monica Sementilli. And in that instance, you will see that Monica Sementilli is sitting in the passenger seat of a truck. Robert Baker is driving, and he's all of a sudden slams on the car, stops the car, and slams the door and walks away. And what you didn't hear is that Monica Sementilli is sitting in that truck. The surveillance agents go up to that truck, and for the next 20 minutes, sitting right beside Monica Sementilli, unbeknownst to her, she is sobbing. As the surveillance agent writes in the report, sobbing uncontrollably. Nothing made up, nothing fake. Sobbing uncontrollably, saying out loud, "I'm so stupid." I want to talk to you about the day that Fabio Sementilli was killed. January 23rd, 2017. The day and the day before for the Monica and the Sementilli family, you will learn, were like any other. There will be no evidence that Monica did or said anything during those 2 days that was different from their normal routine. You will learn that Monica and Fabio and the girls had dinner that Fabio had picked up the night before, and you will hear that that day, the 23rd, began like many others. You will hear that on the morning of the 23rd, early, around 7:30, Bella, who's 16, left for high school like she did every morning of the week. But you will also hear there was one thing that was different. At the very last minute, when there would be no way to plan any elaborate scheme, Fabio didn't go to work that day. Fabio would have normally been at work that day. He had taken off Friday, but the plan was that he was going to be at work on Monday, and at the last minute decided not to go. In fact, you will hear evidence that he had also planned that week to get a colonoscopy, and even had indicated that he wouldn't be home, that he would be at a colonoscopy appointment that Monday, January 23rd. You will also hear that when Bella went to school after she left, early that morning, or mid-morning, I should say, the Sementilli housekeeper arrived. That was Delia Pacheco, who you will hear from shortly. And Delia came in, but this was not a situation where Monica had, chefs and housekeepers that were there all the time. Delia only came 2 times a month. And the prosecutors are going to suggest to you that the one of 2 days that month that Delia was working during the day at that house, somehow Monica had planned a murder. You're also going to know that Fabio left the house at 10:57. He left. He went to run errands. Monica had Fabio promise that day, since he was going to stay home, he was going to get a power washer fixed. I think Ms. Silverman mentioned it, because she had wanted him to clean the driveway. And you will learn that Fabio left at 10:57. And then Monica and her daughter Jess, the 18-year-old, who was also at the house, left themselves to the LA Fitness gym to work out. And you will hear from Matt Nurse that he saw Monica and Jess at the gym. He even saw that Monica was playing racquetball with Robert Baker, her coach, that morning. And you will hear that Fabio, at some point midday, comes back home. And then you'll also hear Jess, the 18-year-old, and Monica come back home. And they have lunch together with Fabio. Delia's at the house, Jess is at the house, Monica is at the house, and Fabio is at the house. Now, the prosecution's theory is that somehow in this, what they've referred to as this tight murder timeline, that somehow you are going to see something done or said or acted on by Monica that suggests she did something or said something to ensure that there would be no one at the house other than Fabio at the time 2 killers came to the home. But what you will see instead from the evidence, ladies and gentlemen, is that the evidence is going to show you nothing could be further from the truth. You'll hear that Bella that day was supposed to, after school, have an interview at a deli in the Valley. You'll hear that definitely Monica and Bella communicated about her interview and to let her know how it went and that she was going to come home afterwards. You'll also hear that Jessica, later that afternoon, had scheduled a last-minute babysitting gig. The friend we spoke of, Deborah Obad, will tell you that there had been no long ago scheduling of a plan. She wanted to run a few errands, and she'd asked Jessica, not Monica, Jessica, if she could come over that afternoon to babysit. You will also hear that Monica had errands to run and was headed to go out planning a dinner that night of fatina, which is like a pasta, and corn for the family, and also to pick up some toiletries for Fabio. And she leaves for Target in the afternoon, but she doesn't leave Fabio alone in the house. She leaves Fabio with her 18-year-old daughter, Jessica, in the house. What you will also learn from the actual evidence is that during the course of that afternoon, Monica Sementilli did not do a single thing while she was shopping at Target or going to the grocery store to pick up the ingredients for the dinner that would have assisted or aided in these 2 killers who showed up at their house. You will hear first evidence that will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely tell you that it is impossible for Monica Sementilli to have orchestrated the murder of her husband. If you are planning a murder and orchestrating a murder to ensure that somehow your husband is alone at the house, the one job you would have is to take some action to ensure that nobody's coming home. Jessica is out babysitting. You'll hear evidence that's clear. Deb Obad's just running a few errands. After the errands are done, Jessica's going to come back to the house. But what you will actually know from the evidence is there was not one phone call or message to Deborah Obad or to Jessica after she left for babysitting that day, trying to find out when she was coming home, control when she was coming home, intercept Jessica from coming home, or finding out from Deborah when Jessica would be done with babysitting and coming home. And there was nothing that Monica Sementilli did or said that would have prevented her 18-year-old daughter from walking in on a murder, potentially being killed herself, or at least seeing who the killers of her father were. And for Bella, you will hear that Bella's interview, in fact, lasted only 30 minutes at the deli. You'll hear that Bella wanted to pick up some glasses, not prearranged, wanted to pick up some glasses, and that Monica, while she was at Target, receives a call from the eye doctor, finding out if it's okay for Bella to pick up the glasses and then come home. Now, Monica could have intercepted Bella. Monica could have said, hey, Bella, I want you to wait at the eye doctor. I'll meet you there, to control when Bella was coming home. But what you will see instead is Monica Sementilli didn't call Bella, didn't text Bella, didn't say anything to try to prevent her daughter from going home. And the prosecution in this case will ask you to believe that Monica Sementilli was willing for Bella Sementilli, her 16-year-old daughter, to come home to two murderers killing her father and potentially die herself. And you will hear that the actual evidence in this case is Bella Sementilli came home within 1 minute of those two killers being in the house. 1 minute to find her father dead. There is nothing on earth that would indicate that Monica Sementilli did anything that could have prevented the slaughter of her children. So this theory that somehow Monica Sementilli, right, was orchestrating, was planning, was doing things, messaging, is completely belied by that fact. And you will also learn that on January 23rd, at the critical time the prosecution wants you to believe that Monica Sementilli was orchestrating this murder, there was no evidence, absolutely no evidence that you will see that there was any communication between Monica Sementilli and Robert Baker for the critical timeline that the prosecution tells you about. The one critical time that there would have been any assistance provided had there been any communication during that period. And you will also see evidence, which we'll talk about later, that at 3:53, the idea that somehow home cameras were accessed for any reason that would have been related to Monica Sementilli plotting and orchestrating the murder of her husband will be proven factually untrue. You will learn that at 3:53, there was nobody at her house. At 3:53, there was no ability to assist the killers because the killers got there much later. And you will also hear that there was a perfectly legitimate reason for Monica Sementilli, who'd asked her husband to clean the driveway, to access her home cameras at 3:53. You will also learn from the prosecution's theory of a murder timeline that the prosecution would have you believe that just prior to this, at 4:25, which the prosecution will tell you is a critical time, Monica is leaving Target. I think the prosecutor mentioned that she's leaving and clearly looking at her phone, and you saw a picture at Target of Monica leaving Target with looking at her phone. You will hear evidence from an expert that shows you that it would not have been possible in any way for Monica to be looking at her home cameras. So whatever she was looking at, it wasn't going to be her home cameras. And you will also see that at an even more critical time, when the killers were at the house and likely killing her husband, Monica wasn't on her phone. Monica wasn't looking at home cameras. Monica wasn't texting or calling anyone. She has both hands on a shopping cart and she's buying groceries. And one of the things that I didn't hear mentioned earlier of the so-called evidence that Monica was somehow assisting or doing something that could have even conceivably facilitated this awful murder is that one of the things you will see from the evidence that Monica Sementilli was doing at the grocery store, in addition to shopping and buying food, is that she accessed a dating website. She went on a dating website that she went on dozens of times before, called Lifestyle Lounge. And you will see from the evidence in the case, that is what Monica Sementilli was doing. Not helping, not communicating, not assisting, and not conspiring. The killing of Fabio Sementilli was unspeakable. It was a very personal stabbing that Robert Baker did with his protege and friend, Chris Austin, who called Robert Baker Unc. And you will hear just came and killed Fabio himself for no reason, because Robert Baker asked him to. You will hear that when Bella and shortly thereafter Monica came home to the house, it was absolutely chaos. You will hear the real devastation that Monica Sementilli and that family experienced from finding their beloved husband and father dead. No faking, no false tears, no smiling off in the distance. You will hear from the people who knew Monica best. In fact, Deborah Obad, you'll also hear from, will be called by the prosecution. She will tell you that when she got to that house, there was no question that Monica Sementilli was devastated. Nothing that could be faked. Physical shaking, physical tears, absolutely out of control. You will even hear that Bella was so shocked she wasn't crying at all. No less grief, no less devastation. You'll also hear that in the chaotic hours and minutes after Bella and Monica discovered Fabio, things were upside down. You'll hear witnesses describe Monica. She can't even put two words together. She didn't want to get on the phone. She was saying things that didn't even make sense. And one of the things you'll hear that she said was that she wanted Deb to get in touch with Luigi, Fabio's son, let him know his dad was taking care of him. That's what you'll hear, Monica asked. The prosecution has actually claimed to you that Monica Sementilli, on the very night her husband died, was making a claim for life insurance. And what the evidence will show you is that could not be farther from the truth. You will hear evidence on the evening of January 23rd, 2017. Monica and the girls at the house stayed in the house while the police were there initially. And then when Deb got there, at some point they were moved over to a kind neighbor's house who took them in. And in those chaotic hours where police and forensics and scientific folks are investigating and over at the house, there are a series of people who come through. There are a series of phone calls. And in fact, Monica, at some point says to her daughter, get Luigi. And Luigi is on the phone. And Monica, for a very brief period of time, has the conversation with Luigi. Your dad took care of you. You can stay in school. There's a policy. But that life insurance policy has nothing to do with Monica Sementilli. You will also learn that Monica's behavior on the night of the murder was absolutely consistent with a woman who had just lost her best friend and husband. And she did nothing, she said nothing to indicate in any way that she was somehow involved. And the investigation of Fabio's murder begins. And what you will also hear and see from the evidence in this case is that the moment police, and it took them all of 3 weeks, the moment the police in this case learned that blood from Robert Baker had been found in that home and that Robert Baker had been having an affair with Monica Sementilli, the police, with no more evidence than that, no evidence that Monica was in any way involved, no evidence that Monica's blood or anything had been found that was actual evidence that she was related to this murder, because they found out that she was having an affair, they set all of their sights, all of their focus from that moment on, February 14th, 2017, on Monica Sementilli. Every single move the police made at that point was with what's known as confirmation bias. The conclusion, before they had any evidence that Monica had anything to do with this crime, that Monica Sementilli must be involved. And every move they made was intended to try to prove that. But they couldn't. And what you will see is that the police from that moment on lied to this family and lied to Monica. And they repeatedly told that family that this crime, in their belief, had been done by the knock-knock burglars, that burglars don't even come back to the home. They should feel safe, that they knew and they had great leads that this murder had been committed by these knock-knock burglars. And what did they do at the same time? Monica, her daughters, not knowing anything about blood of Robert Baker being found at that house, nothing about the blood that they found, they lied. And by lying for 5 months, they allowed Robert Baker, who they knew was the killer of Fabio, to be free and with that family. You will also learn that after Fabio died, Monica did seek comfort with this man she'd been having an affair with. And you will also learn that there was nothing that indicated Robert Baker was involved. Nothing. And Robert Baker pretended to be the comforting lover to Monica Sementilli. And yes, she continued the affair. And yes, she deleted her messages so her family would not find out about her affair. But there's nothing that the police did or found about Monica Sementilli during those months other than what has never been contested, which she continued the affair. And continuing the affair is not evidence that she wanted her husband to die. The prosecution would tell you, or did tell you, that somehow Monica lied to the police. And I want to be very, very clear. They specifically told you that Monica committed a series of lies to the police. And one of the things they highlight is that somehow that Monica claimed not to know Robert Baker, not to know Robert Baker's last name, I think the prosecutor told you. But when you see the actual evidence in this case, you will find out that Monica Sementilli did not lie to the officer. And by the way, this is all recorded, that Monica Sementilli told the police when they asked her if she knew Rob, her friend's last name, she told them that his last name was Baker. She told them that his last name was Baker. The prosecution has told you that Monica was deceptive when police asked her for the paperwork from her home camera system. And she told them she couldn't find it. But she also, I don't believe, mentioned that this is a home camera system that had been purchased over 7 months prior. And there was also a statement to you that somehow it was Monica Sementilli who upgraded that home system. But what the evidence will show you, ladies and gentlemen, is an email clearly and unequivocally showing you that it wasn't Monica Sementilli who upgraded her system. It was Fabio Sementilli. And anything else you hear about Monica Sementilli's communication to the police, you will know when you see the actual evidence that if Monica was not offering information about her private life, it was to cover up an affair. And every single thing that will be claimed that was somehow not forthcoming is absolutely consistent with someone who was desperately trying to cover up the affair they were having.
I don't want to interrupt you. I don't know if it's a good time to take a break or you're close to done or what.
That's fine.
Okay. Let's take our afternoon recess for 15 minutes. The evidence applies. See you back here in 15 minutes.
Ooh, I mean, yeah, it's long, but I find myself just listening. But maybe it's just me because I do have a law degree and legal training. I find this so interesting. While I was completely bored after half an hour of the prosecution's opening statement, that lasted 8 hours. So I saw this from Vicky. Just came on to this case, Nick. Is it worth going back to prosecution opening or to watch from here to understand the case? I think you get the gist of the case through the defense opening statement. Because the prosecution, for some odd reason, the judge allowed them to go through what I believe is almost every piece of evidence there is in this case. She talked about the witnesses, all of them, and what they are supposed to say. If you watch the last half hour of yesterday's stream, the final part of the prosecution's opening statement, you see my reaction. You just see my reaction and then decide if you want to see the rest of the state's opening statement. Oh, oh wow. Yeah, I find this really, really interesting. I really, really do. Blair Burk is really, really good. Might be a bit long-winding, but she's really, really good. And for you who don't know, I found that out today, thanks to somebody mentioning it in chat. Blair Burk was one of the attorneys in the Depp v. Heard trial. She represented Johnny Depp. Now, she also, back in 2017, represented Harvey Weinstein. So, yeah, she is... She has some interesting clients. Yeah, this case took a turn all of a sudden. Do I still believe Miss Sementilli was involved? Yeah. But as always, the prosecution has to prove it. And they kind of need to step up their game. Because this defense attorney, Blair Burk, she's good. All right, let's skip ahead here. After the break.
Continue.
Ladies and gentlemen, once you are able to see and hear the evidence of the prosecution's theory in this case, that somehow Monica Sementilli went from a happy, warm, close family life, being a woman who at midlife was having an affair, to some kind of homicidal murderess and conspirator because she didn't want to get a divorce and because she wanted a portion of a life insurance policy and the benefits her husband made, even though her husband would be gone and she would no longer have his salary. You will learn that this case is going to come down to something very different. You are going to learn from the evidence that only two people in the world know how and why Fabio Sementilli was cruelly and viciously murdered. And the evidence will show you that neither one of them is seated here. You will learn that only two people planned this crime and carried it out. And the evidence will show that neither of those two people is seated here. And you will learn that only two people have already entered a plea for the murder of Fabio Sementilli and admitted their guilt. One who has already been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. They will be in a cage for the rest of their life. No deal to be made, no incentive or benefit to lie. And you will also hear from a man who has every incentive to lie and every benefit to try to save his own life. One of those men, Robert Baker, on the left, is the man who is going to be in a cage for the rest of his life, who's going to get on this stand without any incentive or gain or motive or anything that will be leniency to him or that will help him to get on this stand and tell the truth and admit that Monica Sementilli had nothing to do with his decision to murder her husband. And then you will hear from the other man, Christopher Austin, who has also admitted he murdered. He took a knife and put it in the neck of Fabio Sementilli, that he killed Fabio Sementilli. But you will learn he is the one that is asked for a deal. And how do we know who's telling the truth or lying? How do we know if we don't look at whether there's corroboration, other evidence that indicates that what that person is saying is the truth? And you are going to see that corroboration in evidence that's documentary. I mean written. I mean in written form, you are going to see evidence in this case that allows you to know that Robert Baker is telling the truth. You are going to see in this case, ladies and gentlemen, a communication by Robert Baker one day after Fabio Sementilli was killed. January 24th at 2:05, Robert Baker sends a text that he's later deleted. And that text is to Monica Sementilli, and that text is a condolence text to Monica Sementilli telling her, I'm so sorry. If Monica Sementilli is the criminal mastermind the prosecution would like you to believe she is, why on earth would her co-conspirator, the man she supposedly had commit this murder, send her a text apologizing, saying he was sorry for what grief she's going through, that he's so sorry? Why would he do that? You are also going to see that after Robert Baker was arrested for this murder, after he was in custody, and many years after he was in custody, he is continuing to maintain his innocence, desperately trying in jail to convince Monica that he's innocent, to keep her in his control, to keep her in his purview. And you will hear indisputable evidence that Robert Baker, shortly after he finally confesses to having killed her husband, confesses to the crime, and has been sentenced in July for life without parole. In jail, Robert Baker writes a letter to Monica Sementilli. And Robert Baker, in that letter, tells Monica Sementilli that he killed her husband in an accident, that he'd gone over to her home to drop off some kind of love note. And he wanted to tell her how sorry he was that it had gone out of control and that he had somehow accidentally killed Fabio. And he writes Monica this letter and tries to get this letter delivered to Monica, saying that he's sorry that he accidentally killed her husband. Why? Why would Robert Baker write a letter to Monica Sementilli apologizing for killing her husband and trying to make himself look better somehow by claiming that the reason he did it was unintentional, that it was just an accident, that just something had gone wrong? Why would he do that? And you will see that letter. And that brings us to the other killer, who the prosecution is going to ask you to believe when this man who has admitted he committed this murder as well, is going to get on that stand and claim that Monica Sementilli somehow knew and somehow planned. He's not going to ever testify once that Monica Sementilli ever said a word to him about wanting her husband dead. He's not going to testify once that Monica Sementilli somehow plotted or wrote to him or indicated to him that she wanted her husband dead. What he's going to claim instead is that he understood that from Robert Baker when he agreed, he says, to kill Fabio Sementilli, and did so. You are going to learn, ladies and gentlemen, that Chris Austin is going to testify like he is, not because he saw anything Monica did that was wrongful or heard anything from her that was wrongful, not because she ever told him, not because she spoke to him, not because he ever overheard her say anything. The reason you will hear him say that is because that is the only way his life will be saved. You are going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, that this is a young man who, from his first contact with law enforcement, and remember, the police waited 6.5 years to even question Christopher Austin for the first time, inexplicably. He was a suspect early on. They were so focused on trying to find evidence about Monica Sementilli, which they hadn't found, that it took them 6.5 years of this killer being free before they even bothered to question him. And there will be no doubt in your mind that Christopher Austin's claims are provably false, and that Christopher Austin is going to get on that stand and perjure himself because he was told early on, from the first moments he was arrested, that Monica Sementilli, according to law enforcement, was the only reason he was there. And you are going to hear evidence that you can listen to about the lengths and steps this prosecution has taken to get the prize they want. And you are going to hear, nobody's going to be interpreting it, you are going to hear yourself the things that were said to Christopher Austin before he ever implicated Monica Sementilli. When Christopher Austin is arrested, he's arrested on something called a Ramey warrant, which is a probable cause warrant saying they believe he's committed this murder, and then they took him into custody in Washington State where he was living, and they put him in a jail cell. And they had a law officer, a peace officer, a detective come in and let him know why he was there, and let him know that other people in the case, Robert Baker and Monica Sementilli, that Monica Sementilli was about to start trial in her case. And you will hear, ladies and gentlemen, that when they placed Christopher Austin in that cell and had told him they had arrested him for murder, they placed him side by side, a jailhouse informant, a peace officer, an undercover law enforcement officer who was posing as a cellmate, a wise, knowledgeable cellmate. And you will hear that when they did that, when they placed Christopher Austin in that cell, that undercover agent proceeded to tell Chris Austin exactly what could get him home. You will hear, ladies and gentlemen, that when he gets in that cell and is first told that Monica is going to be going to trial, and the undercover police agent who's already been briefed on everything, who's trying to talk to him and influence him, what you are going to hear is that that undercover agent says to Christopher Austin, fuck that, fuck her life. It's her life or your life. The agent tells Chris Austin, first one to tell, first one out of jail. He tells Chris Austin, if they can get that main, they want that big fish. If they can get that main, motherfucker, they ain't giving a fuck about you. That police agent tells Chris Austin, of course you're going to have to switch your story up a bit. Of course you're going to have to switch your story up a bit. And ladies and gentlemen, what you will learn is that the story Chris Austin needs to switch is that when they first arrest Austin and ask him about Monica Sementilli, he says he doesn't even really know her. He says nothing about implicating her in a conspiracy to murder, or that there's anything he knows she said or done or any way she's acted that is evidence she was involved in this whatsoever. It is the police agent who you will learn tells Chris Austin, before he ever comes up with a story saying, oh yeah, I know she's involved. I know she's involved. Who says to Chris Austin, you got two jobs you can do. You can do the job that's going to get you home, or you do the job that's going to get you gone. And gone is prison for the rest of his life. After he's been sort of
I speculated that there might not have been recordings of this. I was wrong. And this is better. This is, yeah. I can't believe this is legal. Putting an undercover cop as a cellmate, telling this guy, Mr. Austin, snitch on her. Tell the prosecution what they want to hear and you will go home. I can't believe that's legal. Apparently it is in the state of Washington. Is there a state called Washington? Well, wherever they put him in jail.
stewed and simmered by this police agent talking to him. That's when the police try to interview him again. And Chris Austin says in that interview, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm looking for some kind of deal, some type of deal to go home to my girls, his wife and his young daughter. Chris Austin in that interview says, like, I don't know what to do, but if you need me to do something so I can go home to my girls, whatever you need, I'm being accused of, I need to get home to my girls. That's what Chris Austin says. And what does Chris Austin do? He gives the prosecution in this case exactly what they need. He gives them exactly what he knows and learns they need. He gives them that big fish. He gives them the claim that Monica Sementilli was involved in this murder when he knows she wasn't. Whatever you need, he says. I need to get home to my girls. Agent telling him, you need to switch up your story because it's not going to be enough for him not to know Monica Sementilli and not to have indicated in any way that she was involved. He switched up his story. And then from there on out, the prosecution offers him a deal that will get him home, to those girls if he gets on that stand and falsely states that Monica Sementilli had anything to do with the killing of her husband.
His name.
Austin's incentive, his direct motive to come in here and lie in order to be able to go home to his family instead of spending the rest of his life in prison, is exactly what will tell you who's lying and who's telling the truth. You will hear his false story, which will make no sense to you. And we will go into that in detail when he tells it, because he tells so many different stories. He tells the police at first when he's trying to cut his deal, he tells them that he and Baker went to the house just to rough up Fabia, saying that there was some kind of abuse in the home and that he was going there to just rough him up. And then he tells the police, well, I didn't know anything about insurance, but I found out on the day of there was some kind of insurance involved. But he also tells the police he wasn't initially offered anything, and he was kind of upset about that. He tells the police agent that he didn't have any benefit. Then he says first that he flew into LA, not even believing that he was going to commit a murder, that he was flying in for his birthday. And then he tells them a better story, that Baker got him to fly in for the murder. Testing the waters, changing his story every time to be more and more and more what he knows the prosecution wants him to say. And by the time he comes to LA, and by the time he sits down with the prosecutors in LA and gives what Ms. Silverman called a proffer, the story has completely changed to get him what he desperately needs, even if that means falsely testifying against Monica Sementilli. Now, the prosecutor has talked to you about what happened after Monica was wrongly arrested for this crime. And they've talked to you about recordings and statements she supposedly made. But I want to make sure you all scrutinize carefully. We want you to scrutinize the evidence you will see carefully, because what you will see from that evidence, what it will show you, is that when Monica Sementilli was arrested for this crime, consistently and uniformly, she denied that she had anything to do with this offense. You will not hear one recorded statement. I think the prosecutor told you that there were times that she was recorded. She didn't know she was recorded. She didn't think she was recorded. There were these phone calls, some of which were recorded, that she thought that nobody would hear. Not in any of those communications will you hear Monica Sementilli ever indicate that she was a participant in this crime. You will also know that Robert Baker, from the moment they were arrested, did everything in his power to convince desperately Monica that he was innocent. He was so manipulative and controlling. You will hear in the fuller playing of the tapes, not these cherry-picked snippets, but the full tapes you will hear, the context and understanding of what Robert Baker was doing. Desperate to convince Monica, one, that he had had nothing to do with this offense. And desperate, even though he was trying to tell her he had nothing to do with the offense, that somehow it was completely a mistake that she was there also. She was only there because of him, his criminal past, and this wacky thing that they'd found his blood in the Fabio Sementilli home. And yet, as many times as he tried to come up with stories and had convinced her that they had played racquetball together and that blood that had gotten on her shoes would somehow explain the blood in her house, and he worked and worked and worked to try to desperately convince her, you will learn, that he was innocent. There is nothing that Monica Sementilli says that indicates in any way she was doing anything but desperately trying to find out what this evidence was, why they were there, why they were arrested, and how could it be that she was in custody. Only you guys decide what really happened here. Only you judge the credibility and the believability of the people you hear from. Only you decide if what you're hearing on tapes is actually what you're hearing, or is it something different? Only you decide if there's an understandable context and meaning based on the evidence you're hearing. Only you do. The stakes here couldn't be any greater. And we very much appreciate that how seriously you take waiting before making any opinions or decisions in this case until you actually hear the witnesses and see the evidence in this case. And whether you can yourselves feel comfortable beyond a reasonable doubt with the evidence that's going to be presented to you, ever finding Monica Sementilli guilty of anything. Ladies and gentlemen, after 7.5 years of waiting to finally have her day in court, not guilty, ladies and gentlemen, will be the only just verdict in this case. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And they are going immediately into the first witness. This is a recap from yesterday. And yeah, let's keep going. Now, my interest in this is up. Sadly, now it's the prosecution's turn with the prosecution's case in chief. Okay, let's see who this witness is. Hi, Kat. Kat Not Williams in the chat. Yeah, Blair Burk representing.
And raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly state the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Please have a seat where you stand.
Hey, what's your name?
And for the record, say spell your first and last name, please.
Yes, ma'am. It's Daryl Yoshihashi, Daryl. Last name is Yoshihashi.
Thank you. Mr. Yoshihashi, what do you do for a living?
Ma'am, right now I'm a fire inspector and previously firefighter paramedic,
And who do you work for?
Los Angeles Fire Department.
And how long have you been a fire inspector?
7 years.
So your current job as a fire inspector, what does that entail?
Going to buildings, make sure the fire alarm, fire protection features are signed off along with the various trades, like with LADBS, like electrical, mechanical, before they get their certificate of occupancy.
Now, you mentioned that was the last 7 years. What did you do before that?
So the last 10 years was at the fire station, firefighter, and then firefighter paramedic.
And can you explain?
Oh no, Kat. If you want to watch anything about the state's opening statement, it is the final half hour of yesterday's stream, where you see a very, very frustrated me saying words that got that stream demonetized. Yeah.
Explain then when you said firefighter and a fire paramedic, what does that mean?
I guess, fire and EMS in LA City, we have to do both. So we're either running medical calls or fire related incidents. And so we have to be able to do both. So we have the whole, yeah.
And back in January of 2017, then were you employed as such with LA Fire Department as both a fireman and a paramedic?
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay, sorry. So when you went to scenes then, what was your primary duties?
Pretty much abate the emergency, whatever it was. I would say keeping the members of our crew safe and as well as ourselves. And then also if those medical calls, making sure that we got the patients, addressed their medical concerns, got them to the appropriate medical facility. I would say that was most of it. A lot of taking care of families, making sure everybody was taken care of there in terms of that. And I would say in terms of fires, make sure it was put out, overhaul, make sure we didn't miss anything so that we didn't have any rekindles. And just a lot of stuff back at the fire station was just making sure we took care of everything around station, fire prevention, anything we needed to do around the community. Hope that answers.
Yeah, you did. It's a lot. Now, as far as a paramedic, then, were you trained in life-saving measures?
Yes.
Can you explain your background, training, and experience that qualified you for that position, specifically back in January of 2017 as a firefighter as well as a paramedic?
Yes, ma'am. So I guess coming onto the job, we had to be EMT, so more basic level of care, taking blood pressures, bandaging, CPR, those kind of things. But it is an option for us to go to paramedic school if we weren't already paramedics. So I guess our scope within LA County, we're overseen by a medical director, and kind of expands. So we can now, as far as doing EKGs, starting IVs, giving various drugs for various medical conditions. So for us, not only just running calls, but every 2 years, we have to get recertified, go through recertification training, 48 hours of continuing education training to just kind of keep up with our skills, in addition to running drills at the station or on scene, just in real life, I guess. So
thank you. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. On January 23rd of 2017, around 5:06 in the evening, were you notified to respond to a location specifically at 5012 Queen Victoria in Woodland Hills, which is the county of Los Angeles?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain how you're dispatched to a location?
Yes, ma'am. So we get that comes to our station alert alarm system. That base call basically goes to our dispatch center, and then we get dispatched from the station, or if we're out and about training or something like that, we get it on our computer screen on the MDT, which is in our rigs. And then also on the radio. But in that case, we were dispatched from the fire station. And then that's probably all information that's given, that's filtered through our dispatch and whoever's handling that call, and what I guess they see, what level of care, what fire resource they need to send based off of what's happening, I guess, on the dispatch side.
Ultimately, then, did you review and hear whether subsequently the 911 call that was initiated, which sent you to that location?
Not the all the information, I guess, yes, from what.
Okay. If I may mark as People's One, it is a 3-page document. It's a transcript of a 911 call with the accompanying CD. I don't know if you want it as People's 1 and 2 or A and B.
Make it 1 and 2.
Okay. People's 1 will be the transcript. People's 2 can be the accompanying CD. May I pass the transcripts out?
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen, the transcript that's going to be given to you is not the evidence. It is the call itself that is the evidence. The transcript is just to assist you in listening to the call. At the end of the call, counsel, please retrieve People's 1.
Okay, trigger warning, because if we are going to listen to the call that alerted the authorities to the crime scene, you need a trigger warning.
If I can have the original People's 1, 2, please. Thank you. Yeah, please.
Thank you.
And then with the court's permission, I'll play the call. Thank you.
Just get him on the back, Doctor, this quickly. Just point it on one direction and get him on his back. Okay, you're doing good. Keep going, we gotta get him on his back. Do it quickly. Try again. You got some time. Get him off the floor. You're doing good. You're doing good. Keep going. Okay, please use the chair, pull it away.
And is that a fair, accurate depiction of the 911 call associated with this call that you responded to?
Yes, ma'am. Sounds.
I'm sorry?
Please retrieve the
I'll do
transcripts.
Okay. Yeah, what we heard here was the daughter who came home and found her dad in pool of blood and was instructed to try to do CPR. Oh. Yeah, that's rough.
Now, during the pendency of the call we just listened to, then were you en route to the location?
Yes, ma'am.
That day, were you working with a partner or another team member?
Yeah. So on the rescue, it was me and another firefighter paramedic.
Who was that?
Brendan Liu.
Did you go straight to the location as soon as you got the call?
Yes.
Okay.
From our fire station.
When you arrived there, was there anybody else as far as medical support or police officers that arrived prior to you?
Call LAPD, and then there was another engine company so we responded as a rescue from our district, but the rescue in the district where it was happening, they happened to be out maybe on another medical call. So there was their engine there who was staffed with a captain, an engineer, and two firefighters and their EMTs. And at that time, they kind of gave us an idea of what was going on, and they needed us to, basically assess and kind of for us pronounce or determine death, because they just needed us there for the assessment portion of it.
Okay.
Yep.
So when you arrived there, there was fire department paramedic personnel there.
Yes.
Now you mentioned LAPD. Was there any LAPD that you recall there?
At the time, yes, but there were, but I don't recall, how many units or anything like that. They had secured the scene for us to come in and do the medical portion.
Okay. Now, can you just walk us through when you got there, what happened?
So when we got there, we got our medical equipment out, and then we met with the captain who kind of, there was another paramedic engine there, I should say, and that medic said basically, that the victim had penetrating trauma, and then so he needed us to hook our life pack up to run through a couple tests to basically determine that the victim wasn't going to be resuscitated on the field, which we proceeded to do. So we used our medical equipment. We checked for what we do in LA County, it's reference 814. So there are certain times when we will not work up victims, like if there are obvious signs of death, like crush, or if they're decapitated, things along that line. But for the victim, it was that he had a massive laceration and penetrating trauma to him, and then he was basically asystolic on the monitor, so he was flatlined. We listened to his lung sounds, we listened to his heart, everything was coming back negative. So we were able to basically pronounce him, dead at that time.
At that time.
Yes.
Can you describe, in a moment, I'll get to a couple photos. Can you describe then, did you enter the house through the front door, side door? How did you enter the house?
We went through the garage, I believe through the kitchen, and out to the back patio area.
Was there anything in particular you noticed on your route from the garage through the kitchen to the back patio?
Dark. It was dark at the time. The fireplace was still on. And then when we got there, obviously, large amounts of blood in the back patio area.
When you say the fireplace was on, was that inside the house?
Outside in I think it was a pool area, back patio pool area.
Was it like a fire pit?
Fire pit, excuse
Okay.
me.
I'm going to show you, if I may, Marcus Peoples 2, a photograph, back patio of the individual lying over a chair.
People's 3.
3, sorry.
So Mark,
People's 3 up on the screen. Does this appear to be the scene that you witnessed as you arrived there?
Yes, ma'am. That would be it.
And if I may, Marcus Peoples 4, a closer version of Peoples 3.
yes.
Peoples 4. Again, is that an accurate depiction of how the scene appeared as you got there?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, Marcus Peoples 5, a different angle which shows the person on the chair with what appears to be a phone next to him.
You may.
Peoples 5, same thing, from a different angle. Is that the scene as you saw it?
Yes.
And then finally, Peoples 6, if I may, mark, it is a close-up of the victim's face and torso, looking at his right side of his face with some
Yes.
blood. And Peoples 6, is that an accurate depiction of what you saw?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, as far as your expertise, you saw no signs of life. Is that correct?
Correct.
Who pronounced him deceased?
So I was doing the hands-on component with all the medical equipment, and my partner, who he typically you have the person doing the hands-on stuff, and the other partner is doing all the documentation, the radioing in with the base station hospital, and he pronounced and documented as such.
Now, when you got to this location, did you notice any other blood anywhere, any other evidence anywhere else throughout the house? And I have People's 3 up on the screen, but did you notice anything else in the house?
Ma'am, I remember there was blood in the kitchen, from what I recall. Like somebody had walked through it and then went through the kitchen, and then that's about what I remember. Countertop was kind of in disarray, and yeah.
And let me ask you, is it your role or your job then to document all the other evidence at the scene?
For us, mostly, ma'am, it's just the medical component.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Now, when you got there, was there any other individuals that appeared to be family members or anyone related to the victim at the scene?
Yes, ma'am. I remember the wife, and I believe I think it was one of the daughters, a daughter on site, on scene.
And can you describe, do you recognize the wife in court?
It's been a couple years. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't know?
I do not. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. So do you remember then, what you believe to be a wife and a daughter, is that correct?
Correct.
Now,
Yeah.
do you remember anything about the reaction of those individuals?
The one thing that sticks out the most is, just a lot of what I remember from those years back is the daughters was very distraught. And in fact, we had stuck around a couple hours after for, probably for the reasons, just all the emotional things going on at the time, that we stayed for support.
And do you remember anything that sticks out about the wife?
I'm sorry, I do not recall.
Nothing caught your attention as overly distraught?
Sustained.
Did anything catch your attention emotionally about the wife, if anything?
Sorry, ma'am, I don't recall. I really just, it's been all those years, just remember the daughter, and that kind of sticks out a lot.
And where were those two individuals?
They were in the living room, adjacent living room, dining room, I guess, say.
And do you know what they were doing?
No.
Okay. So you stayed there for about a couple hours after, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then why did you stay for a couple hours?
We were just told, I want to say it was by our supervisor, the captain of the engine, to stay, just in case the family members needed to, just because of the emotional times, there for support, for grieving, and then also if anybody additionally needed to be transported to the hospital. So we stayed in the rescue, finished up our paperwork. I got everything set for our next call and stayed there.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you.
One moment. I'm gonna see you at sidebar.
Okay. That's a weird spot to have a sidebar, but here we go. Sidebar counter 3. Yes, folks, if you have seen me before, you know I have a sidebar counter. If you're completely new here, hi, I have a sidebar counter. Oh. All right, let's skip.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is Paramedic Hayashi, is that how you,
Yoshihashi.
Yoshihashi?
Yes, sir.
And your title again?
Fire inspector.
Fire inspector.
Yes.
Your job was to go there and see if you could render medical aid to the victim. Is that correct?
Correct, sir. Yep.
That was your only job.
Yes, sir.
Did you prepare a report in this case?
So I hope I answered your question, but the only report was the one that my partner on the rescue, when he finished up with the medical findings, or like what we had done on site.
And the purpose of that report was to record the medical findings that you had made at the time of the incident. Is that right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And I assume it was what you just testified to here today.
Yes.
Did you move the body in any way during the course of your treatment of the victim?
I
No-
object, Your Honor, that assumes facts not in evidence.
Again, I will entertain your objection. Proceed.
Did you move the body in any way?
Wait a minute. What did the judge actually say?
Again, I will entertain your objection.
Ho ho. He says to the prosecution, again, I will not entertain your objection. Ooh, ooh. Judge. Shade. That was the sidebar. Apparently. Because as it seems, this judge is psychic. He knew this was going to happen. Probably this has some kind of pre-trial ruling. And he has to then remind the prosecutor, again, I will not entertain your objection. Ooh. Oh, this, folks, ignore what I said about this trial yesterday, that I actually thought of skipping it. Oh, I'm all in for this.
Proceed.
Did you move the body in any way?
No, sir. We didn't physically move him. We just kind of worked around, like in terms of putting our EKG patches, in terms of just looking at his eyes to make sure we checked the eyes to make sure they're, fixed and dilated versus reactive, listening to lung sounds. But we were able to do all that kind of where he lay. Yeah.
And when you say we, you had a partner with you.
Yes. the other paramedic that was with me, he was doing documentation. I was doing all the manual parts of it with the stethoscope and all that stuff and the pen light.
So would you do the treatment examination and then call out to him what you were finding?
Yes,
And then he prepared the final report?
correct.
You know how long it took you to get to the scene after you first got the call?
I want to say, sir, it was within 5, if I remember correctly, 5-10 minutes. 5
Okay.
minutes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you did not take the 911 call.
That's correct.
So you were relayed information to go to the scene and do what you did.
Correct.
Now, when you got there, did you examine the body at all to determine if there were any visible wounds that you could find?
Yes, sir. I mean, just scanning around. Yes.
Okay, and what did you find, if you recall?
The main laceration to his neck, and I believe there was penetrating injuries to the torso, and then based off that, we kind of run down our criteria. As soon as it's penetrating, then we run down our checklist of items that we have, additional items.
Was there anyone from the police department there at the time you were conducting your examination?
They were on site, but no, they left us to do our medical, our job basically at the time.
So as far as taking photographs or examining the scene for evidence, you had no role in that?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you didn't see anyone at that time from the police department examining the scene?
No, sir. Not at the time.
And you said you saw a couple of civilians there, is that right?
Family members.
Yes.
I believe the daughter, yeah, and they were when we were doing our thing, they were in the living room area, I believe.
Were they accompanied or within the presence of officers?
Yes.
Did you prepare any report as to anything they said or did or their physical appearance or attitude?
No,
Okay. Everything you're testifying to is from your memory, is that correct?
that's correct.
You can't say as you sit here right now, even if you recognize the wife. It's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right. How did you know it was the wife?
You know, I think because the daughter, when she was there, she was screaming like "mommy." So I was just, yeah.
So Dan, I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to have to take our adjournment at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be in adjournment until tomorrow at 9 o'clock. As usual, the admonition applies not to discuss this case among yourselves with anyone else or form or express any opinion until the cause is finally submitted to you. Try and be here on time. You know the elevators are slow. Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Inspector.
I'm sorry. I'm just about done, and I understand he has somewhere to go tomorrow. Could you give me 30 seconds?
You've got 30 seconds, counsel.
Okay. What you remember is the daughter yelling and the mother consoling the daughter. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Anything on redirect?
No redirect.
I'm sorry?
No redirect.
Thank you, sir, and you are excused. And again, remember the admonition, ladies and gentlemen. See you tomorrow at 9. Thank you.
All right, that was it of day 2. Yeah, but this judge apparently likes for people to be on time. All right, let's go to today. Let's go. Let's see. When did they start? Here's Judge.
Thanks.
Nothing else.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell for you who are completely new. We already lost a juror in this trial. I don't know why, but we are down 1 juror, so an alternate had to step in.
I'm going to try and seat alternate 7 and 8 in the empty chairs,
Okay.
2 and 3, so that I'm on my way to the witnesses. And Beth doesn't call for a response either. Thanks. All right. I might as well, since I'm here, I might as well just wait.
Okay. And the seal was up again. Hey, here we go.
7 and 8, you've been moved to new chairs, but you will always be endeared to me as alternates 7 and 8. So I thought about you last night when my wife got called in for jury duty. Nobody gets out of it. And that's what I even told her. You may call the next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just for a brief portion, we are going to call to the stand Detective Ryan Verna, who's retired.
Okay, we are going directly into a retired detective.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed with the stand.
Oh. He doesn't look old enough to be retired. But remember what the defense said in their opening statement. These guys were tunnel visioned, confirmation biased. They even allowed, even though they knew Rob Baker was the murderer, they allowed him to go free on the streets for 5 months before they arrested him because they thought they could get to Monica Sementilli. And this is one of the guys who thought that was a great idea. So I can't wait for the defense cross-examining this guy.
And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
It's Ryan, R-Y-A-N. Last name is Verna, P as in Victor, E-R-N-A.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Verna, are you currently employed?
I'm not.
Are you retired?
Yes.
When did you retire?
In 2020.
When was that?
June of 2020,
Okay. Approximately how many years were you at your previous employment?
20 years.
And where was that?
Los Angeles Police Department.
And in what capacity were you working when you retired in June of 2020?
I was a homicide investigator for Valley Bureau.
Okay. And how many years had you worked in a homicide unit or division?
9 years.
Okay. And how long were you assigned to Valley Bureau homicide?
It was established in 2016, so approximately 4 years.
And approximately how many homicide detectives were assigned to Valley Bureau homicide at the time when you were there between 2016 and 2020?
There were approximately 18 working detectives, along with additional supervisors and support staff.
Approximately how many homicides did you personally handle yourself?
Over my 9 years,
Yes.
Approximately 30.
Okay. And approximately how many homicide cases did you assist on?
Hundreds.
Okay. And did you work on the case of the murder of the victim in this particular trial, Fabio Sementilli?
I did.
And were you assigned as one of the investigating officers to this case?
I was.
And did you have a partner with you?
Yes.
And who was that?
Gene Parshall.
Okay. Is he now deceased?
Yes.
Okay. And was there, when you work on a case, whether it be a homicide or any other type of case within LAPD, are cases assigned within LAPD some type of unique tracking number?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes. Each case is given what's called a DR number. It's a series of digits. So it starts off with the year, and then so it'd be a two-digit number, and then a two-digit number for the division it's assigned to, and then a 5-digit number for the actual case itself as it progresses. So
Sequentially through the year?
yes. So the first case assigned in the year would be 0001, and then it would move on from there.
Okay. And is this referred to the LAPD DR number? Is that like a divisional report number?
Yes.
And the divisional report number for this case, was that 17-21-05194?
Yes.
Is that a unique case number within LAPD?
Yes. It would only be assigned to one case.
And if it's a unique case number, then throughout your investigation, what happens to any evidence that is collected pursuant to your investigation?
It is also booked to that particular number.
Okay. And did you and your partner, Detective Parshall, handle the investigation into the homicide involving Fabio Sementilli for several months?
Yes,
And at some point in time, was the case reassigned to LAPD's robbery homicide division?
it was.
And is that something that happens occasionally to cases that you would initially be assigned to?
Occasionally.
And when does that happen?
In general, when does that happen?
Yes.
Well, it comes with a lot of discussions internally within our bureau, and then it would come with discussions within robbery homicide division. And ultimately, there's particular reasons why it would be reassigned.
Okay. And is there usually a common reason why it may be reassigned from the divisional level to robbery homicide division?
Yes, I mean, we have within our bureau, we have limited resources. We have a limited number of detectives that can handle cases, and when they grow outside the scope of what's a normal case within our bureau, then we have to start looking for outside resources.
Okay. And is the robbery homicide division one of those resources?
Yes.
And so did you handle this case from January 23rd of 2017 through sometime in March of 2017?
Yes.
And were you still involved in this case after it was assigned to the robbery homicide division in March of 2017 until the arrest in June of 2017?
Yes, in some capacity.
Okay. And did you work between March and June, the date of arrest, together with the detectives from robbery homicide division?
Yes.
Do you recall who those detectives were?
Yeah, it was Detective Barry Tellis and Detective Chris Gable.
Okay. And during that period of time, did you and or your partner build a relationship with the defendant in this case, Monica Sementilli?
Yes, we did.
And did you also interview her on a couple of occasions?
Yes.
Do you see her here in court?
I do.
Can you identify her for the record, please?
She's seated to my right, wearing a blue blazer with a white shirt.
Thank you, Your Honor. And when the case was transitioning to the robbery homicide division, did you and your partner make the defendant aware of the fact that the case was being transferred to robbery homicide division, or was that kept secret?
It was kept secret.
Okay. And for what reasons?
Well, at the time, there was a belief that she may be involved in the case as a suspect, so we weren't going to play our cards that way.
Okay. On the date of January 23rd of 2017 at about 6:30 in the evening, were you notified of a homicide?
Yes.
And how does it work when you're assigned to a homicide division in terms of notifications?
Well, typically, there's radio calls generated. Officers are dispatched and respond to the scene. Once there's a confirmation that someone has passed away from homicide, they will notify their division watch commander, who then notifies our supervision at our bureau, and then they notify us. And so we would respond from where we were, which in this case was my house.
Okay. So if you are assigned to a homicide division, does that mean that you can be called out at all hours of the day and night, including
Yes.
weekends? And so after you were notified, as you mentioned, about 6:30 p.m. of this homicide, approximately what time did you arrive at the scene of 5012 Queen Victoria Road in Woodland Hills within LA County?
Approximately 8:10 p.m.
Okay. And do you recall how long you were there or what time you finally left the scene?
I believe it was sometime around 2:30 in the following morning.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I completely forgot. Skybell became a member. Thank you. You now have access to all the members only content and your own emojis here on YouTube's. And yeah, so thank you so much. And for you, if anybody else is considering it, it's $3 a month. Thank you so much for your support, Skybell. Thank you. All right, let's continue.
Your Honor, I have a set of photos that is marked crime scene. It contains 82 pages. May this set of photographs be marked, please, as People's 8. I'm sorry, 7.
Yes.
Showing you what's been now marked as People's 7. If you could just take a brief look through those.
Did you want me to look through every page?
Just take a brief look and tell me, have you previously reviewed this entire packet?
Yes, I have.
And do the documents, the photographs that are contained in this packet accurately depict what you observed at the crime scene on the evening of January 23rd, 2017?
They do.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have another set of crime scene photos that is labeled crime scene patio, victim Fabio Sementilli, and it is 25 pages in length. May it be marked, please, collectively as People's 8.
It may.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach? Thank you, Your Honor. Showing you People's 8. Can you again briefly look through those photographs?
Yes.
Have you previously reviewed this packet?
Yes,
And again, do these photos accurately depict what you observed at the crime scene that night?
they do.
Thank you.
All right. Just in case they will actually show the crime scene photos,
Your Honor, I have a third
This
set
is
of
going to
photographs
happen.
that is labeled Sementilli Residence with the address.
because
It
I
is-
like to keep my channel.
24 pages in length. May it collectively be marked as People's 9.
Yes.
Thank you. Showing you People's 9. Again, if you could review the photographs contained in that packet.
Yes,
Have you previously reviewed this packet?
yes,
And again, does this set of photos accurately depict the crime scene or the, not necessarily the crime scene, but the residence that you were at on that evening, January 23rd?
yes, it depicts the residence.
Okay. Not necessarily taken on 23rd, but photographs of the residence you were at on January 23rd.
Correct.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this point, we are going to switch to another witness. We just wanted to mark some exhibits. If Detective Verna could step off the stand, we will subsequently recall.
Not quite. You may cross-examine.
Thank you. Detective Verna, those 3 packets of photographs, were they taken at your direction?
No,
So there were other LAPD officers on the scene when you arrived?
there were
Was there personnel from the crime lab there as well when you arrived?
not when I arrived. No.
So these photos were taken after you arrived?
Yes, 2 of the packets. The first packet I was shown are overall pictures of the crime scene. The second packet were photos of the decedent for the most part, in position where he was. And then the third packet was taken at a later time. I believe those photos were when the home was listed for sale, for the most part.
So that would have been what, weeks later,
I think months later.
months later, at your direction? The photos were.
I didn't
taken-
direct the home to be sold. No,
No.
Yeah.
You didn't buy it either, no.
I did not. No.
I'm talking about the photos
Yes.
that were taken weeks later. Was that at your direction?
No, I believe it's something that the realtor did when they listed the home.
I see. So that wasn't part of LAPD's investigation?
Correct.
But you've identified them as photographs you've seen before, and it accurately reflects the location that is depicted in the photographs. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That's right.
And the first set of photographs, does the crime lab or SID, if that's the initials, decide which photographs to take of the victim and the crime scene and so forth, or do you direct them in any way?
For the most part, they're directed at what's going to be of interest to us. They do take overalls that they take themselves. We don't need to direct them to take an overall of a house, or most likely the vehicles that are parked out front. That's something they just kind of do themselves.
So they take it upon themselves to decide what photographs might be necessary for the investigation and so forth? Or do you assist in any way?
We assist to a certain degree. I mean, like I said, when they show up, they do what's called overalls. So they'll take pictures of the general house, the street, vehicles that are parked in the driveway, things like that. Now, when it comes to actual pictures of the decedent, we kind of direct like how they're going to be taken from, what angles, what's important. If there's evidence that's at the scene, we direct them where the evidence is at, to take photos of that stuff.
What about the rest of the house that is not the actual crime scene? Are photographs taken of the entire house and bedrooms, other rooms and so forth?
I don't recall if they were taken all over the house at this location. I know there's like a second floor that wasn't in play. So I don't know if there was pictures of those rooms or not.
You don't recall directing them to take photographs of anywhere else in the house other than the actual crime scene garage and so forth?
I don't recall, and I don't know if it was necessarily my call on which photos were taken. I'm just talking in general about how things work.
So there may be other photographs besides the ones that you looked at that were taken in this case?
There could be.
Right? Okay. You indicated at some point that the case was transferred, is that correct?
Correct.
And that was because you needed more personnel? Did I hear that right?
I can give you specifics if you'd like.
Well, I heard more personnel was necessary
Correct.
to engage in the actual investigation.
Correct.
Things like tailing the suspects and so forth.
Yes, there was a belief at one point in time that a wiretap would be necessary in this case. and to run a wire room, it's virtually impossible for our bureau to do something like that. So in that case, yes, it was out of our scope of the realm of what we could do.
Okay, and also entailing suspects and so forth.
Well, we don't do that in general. We don't have the ability, we don't have the cars or the manpower. So that's why we reached out to other agencies within our department to handle that, like G&D.
And other agencies were reached out in this case.
Correct.
Okay. You indicated you did not communicate with Ms. Sementilli and that she was a suspect in the case, obviously, correct?
Say it again, sir?
You did not communicate to Ms. Sementilli that she was a suspect in this case.
Oh, absolutely not.
And you never told her that Mr. Baker was a suspect in this case. Is that correct?
No, sir.
It is correct.
Oh, it's correct. Yeah, but we didn't. Yeah, no, we did not tell her.
You had, by that time, the scientific evidence pretty much established that he was a prime suspect as one of the two murderers. Is that correct?
At one point we did, yes.
And then you continued your investigation for several months without notifying Ms. Sementilli of that fact. Is that correct?
Yeah, they seemed pretty friendly, so we did not.
We've established that. We've established that. And there was a second murder you were aware of. Is that correct?
We knew there was an additional suspect at the time, but we did not know who it was.
And did you continue your investigation into the identity of that individual?
Yes.
And I take it you were long gone from the force by the time that he was identified and arrested. Is that
That's
your
right.
statement?
Yes.
Do you have any role in the case after you retired,
No.
other than testifying here today?
No, sir.
Can you tell us approximately when you determined that Mr. Baker was a suspect in this case?
I believe the date was February 14th, 2017, when the DNA results came back.
And that was due to scientific evidence and the results of DNA being found in locations in the car and so forth, which would indicate that he had been present, his blood was present, and so forth.
Correct.
So from that date, he was a suspect.
Yes,
Could have been arrested.
could have been.
And from that day on, one of your duties was to try to document whether or not he and Ms. Sementilli were having an affair. Is that right?
It wasn't about whether they're having an affair or not. That's nothing.
You knew that
I wasn't
already?
investigating an affair.
Well, you were investigating a murder, correct?
Yes.
And during the course of the murder, you uncovered evidence that they were having an affair. Is that
Yes,
right?
that is correct.
And that was a major part of your investigation, correct? Documenting that.
Documenting it, yes. It's whether or not they had an affair is not part of my homicide investigation, though.
Right. It's irrelevant whether or
Right.
not they were having an affair. What's relevant is whether or not she participated in the murder.
Absolutely.
And that's what your investigation was focused on.
Correct.
Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Honor.
Yes, briefly on these topics. Would it be fair to say that even though you had DNA evidence pointing to Robert Baker as being at the crime scene and also being in the victim's Porsche that was stolen after the murder, that you and the other homicide detectives at Valley Bureau continued to investigate him along with anybody else that you suspected might have been involved prior to making any arrests?
Yes.
So the test results of a January 23rd, 2017 murder came back, and everything pointed at Rob Baker on February 14th. And he wasn't arrested until 5 months later. Does it really matter? Because if you hauled him in, threw him in a jail cell, offered him a plea deal, why wait 5 months? Well, apparently, just days later after the murder, they thought she was in on it. So they let a known murderer walk the streets for 5 months. Yeah. Oh, well, folks, I thought this, I thought this witness, because this is, I mean, the only person more or less alive today who had the sole focus on this case. And this is all he's testifying about? Crime scene photos, or are they bringing him back later? So, yeah. Now, with this trial, because in order for me to mentally survive it, because this is California, they just started today's trial, which is roughly 4 hours, well, 4 or 5 hours later than my usual trials, which is East Coast. So what I will do is I will start at 9:30 tomorrow a.m. and we will continue with this trial because I need some sleep and I need to do some work and I need to feed Mr. Jingles. But this case and now he disappears. He's been bugging me all this time and now he walks off. So, folks, this trial got really interesting all of a sudden. Now, I know there are high-profile cases all over the place at the moment. But I for a minute after the prosecution's opening statement, actually thought, nah, F it. I'm choosing another trial. But this one got interesting with the defense opening statement. So yeah, gavel to gavel, California v. Monica Sementilli. So I will see you all back here tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We will go through today, skip the breaks, have fun, and looking forward towards the cross-examinations. Because for you who didn't know, Miss Sementilli is represented by Miss Burk. Miss Burk was one of the attorneys in the team that that represented Johnny Depp. She is the one who took the deposition of Amber Heard. You know, the snacky thing. And she's good. So yeah, this will be interesting. Everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you for hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. And remember, hug your family. Unless your family's crap, then screw them and give your love to the people who deserve it. Okay? Tomorrow also, long overdue, my 2024 in retrospect stream with the Wheel of Regrets. Okay, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Against the void, grasp the twisted threads of truth, laughing in the face of chaos. maze of thoughts ensnare. Every joke a blade prepared, cuts through lies with humor's flair. Unseen wisdom few can bear.